How many times have you thought, if I could just automate a piece of my system or a process, you would save yourself a lot of time, energy, and money? So you start the process and then you realize there are some little flaws in the fact that when you automate, you take away the things that make your brand authentic. So that's what happened when I decided to create a video script writer project. And I'm going to go through it with you today so that you can see there are alternatives to automating yourself away or using AI to enhance your process and not replace you in the process. So let's get into it. A little backstory. I decided that two things I'm doubling down on are Substack and my videos. Now, I knew that for the video, it wasn't about the monetization, it was more about the education. So I needed to take them from scattered thoughts and the theory behind everything to a structured system that takes you behind the scenes with me. But I also needed to do this without losing the authenticity that is a big part of DigiNav and my brand. So a couple things that I needed to do were I needed my videos to feel less scattered and more cohesive. And then I know that the magic in these videos is showing you the how and not just the why. But in order to do that, I needed structure, but not at the cost of losing my voice. So for me, the solution was to have AI collaborate to build a system and that included a template that I could follow so that it would be a little more cohesive. And so that's where we started. So the first thing that I did was I picked my favorite YouTube videos as far as structure and how they presented information. And I took some screenshots and I used them as a reference point. And what I did in chat was I said, okay, here is what I'm trying to achieve. These are the way that I like things to be laid out. These are my favorite presenters. And so what I want to do is create a template so that I can present the information to you. I have a little process that I do. I screenshot along the way. And so giving it the information isn't the problem. The problem is making sure that it flows correctly so that you get the most out of what is trying to happen. So I go through this whole conversation with chat and we get down to where it says, okay, I have all the answers I need. Here's the overview of the template, and then here's the template. And it was so that I could copy and paste it into Google Docs. So then I said, okay, that's a good idea. But then I realized that one of the problems was I was going to be not using ChatGPT, but using Claude. I like Claude when it comes to content. I don't want to say content writing because it's more of editing and flow and making sure that things are working correctly. So the first step was to distill the information into this template. And the first thing that I noticed was the big problem is I don't want it to write for me or write the script. I don't want to read a script, and it has to be in my own words because I'm literally showing you behind the scenes stuff. And I came to the realization that, okay, first of all, I did this in chat and I need it to be in Claude because that's where I find it works with my voice better. And also, I didn't I didn't want the AI to speak for me. I wanted it to think for me, just like I did with creating the template in chat was to go step by answering questions and getting clarification. But the irony in the whole setup was that it was creating a template that was going to create a script that was taking away my voice and experience. So I said, okay, we're going to take a step back. And what we're going to do is we're going to move this from chat to Claude because one, there's a little bit of nuance difference between the two. And then two, I knew that there was something missing. So here's what I did. I ran the initial prompt in chat, but it needed more structure. And I knew that. I moved that conversation to Claude to get more nuanced guidance. And I made sure that I included screenshots and the template that chat had set up for me and said, we aren't going to refine this. So what happened was I put everything in here and I told it I had this conversation with chat and it created this template and I just want to make sure that I'm on the right path. And so it did the same thing that chat did, where it kind of we walked through some pieces of the puzzle. It pinpointed where it thought the issues were going to be, and then it made recommendations to update the template, the overall template that I was going to be using. And some of it was just, this part is at the end. It should be at the beginning. You're not clear on this part, blah, 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 blah. So what happened was it cleaned up the template, right? It said, we're going to fix the template and put it into a more cohesive flow. And then it made targeted changes to better align with my style of presenting the information. Now, did I tell ChatGPT as much detail as I told Claude? I don't know. I'd have to read through the whole thing, but I'm thinking probably not. I probably got more pinpointed when I went the second go around. So sometimes it's better to go ahead and put these into two different AIs to see what the results are. And so now it was creating a framework that really took into play my voice, my process of creating these videos. And so the pivot was that I had better context for the goals that I was trying to find a solution for, which was to create a template to help me create better videos that are more cohesive when presenting the information. And so that's what we did. We created a template. I put it into Google Docs. And the reason that I put it into Google Docs was I knew I was going to be using Claude. And when you attach doc files for Claude, it gives the most up-to-date version. So even if I keep reiterating this template as I create to refine it, it's going to have the most up-to-date version. What it did was it said, okay, we need to set some foundational pieces, a reusable outline, and let's just go from there. But there was a problem when I created this template and I ran the first test. But I knew that it needed to be stored in Google as the single most source of truth. And it needed to be easy to update and share, not just with my AIs, but with anybody else that would come into the process either now or later. And it needed to be repeatable, not just for every video, but a kind of outline on how I could record these or structure these going forward. So it gave me a writing template that had sections in it. And then it had what it called beats or key points of the chapter, meaning make sure that you cover this, or did you cover this, or why didn't you? And then cues, which are the visual translation. Now, I used this template and process to create this video, and you can see that it's giving me the different pieces to put into play as far as visuals and key points and transitions. So the template now became a scaffold for the delivery of the information. And so what I needed to do now was take that and turn that into a project because I knew that I wanted to make sure that I created a project in Claude and that I had to test it in Claude. So what I did was I created the first iteration of the project. And so it's the video script writer. And what I did was I added the files, I added my template, I added my context docs, and then I added the instructions and I ran the first test. It gave me a script, like a script it wrote for me. It still did give me like the transitional phases and it gave me the visual cues, but I didn't want the script. Why? Because when I was reading through the script, one, it didn't really sound like me. And two, it put words into a process that didn't really happen. So I was like, okay, this isn't working for me. So what happened next is I needed to recreate the instructions. So for step 5 was the test and revise. I created the instructions, I created the project, I ran the test, and then I realized that, uh-oh, something isn't working. So did it fit my voice? Yes, but it was more of a script, and so it was a little wonky and clunky. There was smooth flow between the sections, so I knew that could stay, and it was useful information, but not bloated, meaning that it didn't get down to minutia details. So I knew that the template was the way to go, but I needed to make a tweak to pivot for my needs. And so I went back and I said, let's go through the whole process because we are collaborating on this. So maybe if I tell you how I want this to work, we can tweak the template to make sure that it does work. And so what happened was the first thing I said was, I do not want a script. I want talking points. So I said, look, here's the first thing I do. The first thing I do is I give you the topic and the brief, and this sets the focus and intention for the video. And then the second thing that is going to happen is we are going to clarify the information. You will ask me any essential questions or for clarification if the information is a little spotty or not presented in the best manner. And so the third thing was we are going to come up with a structure, and the structure is the chapters and the sequencing. So the great thing is it breaks it down into chapters or bite-sized chunks, and then it says, here's the sequence. Does this make sense for what you did? And so the fourth step is, I was saying, is for me to review this, adjusting before it gets drafted. And then in the final thing or in the final template, I need to make sure that it continues to have the beats, the cues, and the transitions. But instead of the script, I want it to be talking points. And then finally, I need to refine. So I tighten the flow, adjust the clarity where it didn't make sense. I needed a repeatable loop that you can help me to create the outline for the script. And so it did that and it adjusted the instructions. And what happened was it said, okay, here's the new instructions. Let's go ahead and test it again. So this is test 2 now. When you create these processes and projects, it's like any system or process for your business. You can't just like throw it on paper and say, okay, it's going to work and it's never going to change, right? So round 1 was we ran it. It was script based. It was fast to produce. The wording was polished. The clear narrative was structured in a way that made sense, but it still did not have my voice. I did not want to read the script from a teleprompter. It made me feel very rigid on camera, and it assumed some details that were not there. So the second one for this test, I said, okay, let's change the instructions, which we did. So we went back to the video script writer, and all I did was replace the instructions with the new instructions. And if you are not used to creating a project, when you create a project, you give it a name and a description, and then you give it the instructions that you want it to follow. And so this is where I took those 6 steps and said, this has to be included in the instruction, and we want it to be based on the template. And so I saved the instructions, and then again, I still used the same context files. Those did not change at all. And so I ran it the second time, and what it did was it did give me the talking points, right? So instead of scripts, it was saying, here are the different talking points. Instead of the script, it said, here's your intro. Here are 3 things you should cover. Here's chapter 1. Here are the key points. And then once I said, okay, this looks good, then it gave me the talking points and the outline. And so I was like, okay, this is good. I like this. Let's work with this. So what happened was, now when I create for a video, a couple things happen. It becomes cohesive and authentic because I'm using the talking points. So now it's not you replacing my words. It's just giving me food for thought along the way, a clear structure to preserve both my voice and the delivery of what I was trying to achieve. And it is efficient and valuable, meaning that it lays everything out for me. And so I can look and say, do I have that visual cue? Do I have that screenshot? Do I have that conversation? Do I have that little video? Do I need a slide for it? And so now it becomes a collaboration and not a replacement, meaning it is not doing the job for me. It's taking my voice, my lessons, the information that I want to get across, and it's keeping it authentic to me. So the final result was I was organized, it became efficient, and it remained authentic so that it was a repeatable process for all of the videos going forward. Long story short, in doing this, it took me from scattered to structure, right? I had all kind of crap everywhere. I had screenshots. I kind of had a little bit of an outline. I knew the process because I went through it. And instead of becoming a replacement, it became an amplification. So it took all of the pieces that I had to present to you and made them cohesive, and also put them so that I could create these slides for the presentation of the information, or I could grab screenshots that maybe I forgot to get the first time. So now it's telling me, here's what we need to create a video that is what I have in mind to present. And so the overall outcomes for creating this process were definitely met. It was faster generation. So now I can give it the context, I can give it the screenshots, I can give it the lessons, and it will help me to outline that in a way that is easy to present. It will be consistent. Instead of being like all over the board, I now will have a more consistent structure to not only create these videos, but also creating these processes, these projects, these automations, these things that I want to present to you. It's coherent, right? There's a clear narrative, there's a beginning, there's an end, there's a smooth transition. And more importantly, it authentically preserved my voice, because if I can't say that enough, it is that is the most important piece to me, is that I'm not having AI or somebody else tell you, these are the lessons I learned, but they weren't the lessons at all. When you are creating with AI or automation, you have to partner with it and you want it to amplify and not replace. Be explicit about which parts it's okay for AI to take a little liberty with versus what is a no in your book. Don't do this. For me, it was I do not want you to write a script. I want you to create talking points. And then you need it to make sure that you structure it in a way that you give it the outcome that you desire. This delivery has to be authentic and it has to take into play the process that I am actually trying to show you because I've already been there and done that. It uses talking points and review loops so that I make sure that I'm presenting the information a little more coherently, structure, review, the talking points, and finally the refinement. So on each of those steps, I'm involved. I give it the topic, I ask for clarity, and we have that back and forth. It gives me the structure, and I say yes or no. And then again, I review what it's given me as far as an output from the template. I look at the talking points to make sure that they are actually my talking points or part of the process. And then the refinement to say, yes, no, okay, we're good. And so this now becomes a tool that is not replacing my thinking. Again, it's amplifying it. I created a automation process, a project in Claude that helps me to write out a video script. And when I say write out a script, it doesn't put words into my mouth. It gives me talking points and a direction for creating the video. This is just one of my build in public journeys because the next part is going to be refining the process so that I can easily create these slides like I'm presenting in this video or the screenshots that are needed as I go through the different iterations because it's all about learning and refining. And when we do that together, it creates some aha moments for both you and I. We want to use AI to amplify our thinking and not replace us, our brand, or our voice. It's your turn to tell me what you're thinking of turning into an automation or collaborating with AI on. And together we can create this journey together. Okay, so now it's your turn to decide what you are going to tackle as far as AI and automation. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can keep up to date on these videos as they're presented. So thank you so much for watching my video. And again, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.